G, B flat, whatever.
F.
Okay. It's F, you know. Where are you? Are you out there?
Crazy.
Kind of out there.
I'm Adam Manis.
And I'm Peter Martin.
And you're listening to the You'll Hear It podcast.
Music explored.
Explored, brought to you today by Open Studio. Go to openstudiojazz.com for your jazz lesson needs. I didn't even say anything that time, Peter. That's how deep into the... Oh, we're getting.
Yes. You're
Yeah.
also deep into that microphone once again. I like that.
Shoot, I keep forgetting. Sorry,
it's okay.
Caleb. Sorry,
Didn't mean to make you self-conscious. It was nice. It was an intimate approach to the entry point of our episode. I like that shirt, man. You've been stepping it up from the attire standpoint. Not that you were, I mean, you were starting at a high level. I didn't think it was possible to step it up, yet you did.
Well, thank you very much.
Good save.
I'm liking this shirt too. It's
you're really taking it out with that shirt. What? No.
Taking it out.
We're trying to pull it in with the theme of the episode.
It's a blue shirt. How's that taking it out?
No, it's nice, but it's got vertical stripes, right? Which is good for a tall, slender man as yourself. No, I'm saying
he said tall. I know what you meant. I know what you meant.
But you
for
kind
a
of
larger gentleman.
No, I didn't mean. No, I'm saying.
By the way, Husky brand is Sears used to make. Remember Husky brand?
Of course.
Yeah.
I remember being ashamed remember when there was a Husky sizing.
Yeah.
There was Husky sizing. I was boxed in. I thought that just meant boys size. Turns out not all boys were Husky
big
like
boys.
I was.
Big boys.
No, but you've got the vertical stripes, but they're not congruent, right? They're of varying widths.
They are.
And then they're
colors.
abandoned over on the side into another fabric. It's kind of a patchwork of fashion.
Yeah, Peter, I like to mix it up. I like to take it out. I like to try new
You like
things.
to take it out. I like it.
This is my summer look. Disjointed stripes.
Right.
Apparently. But
Someone had a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek or negative or maybe complimentary, I can't even tell, comment on my attire from a recent episode. I don't know why we focus in on the personalization of the comment.
We are human beings, and we do want to look good. We do want to look good on the for the listeners here. We do this podcast on YouTube as well, so
yeah.
Pretty easy. So wait, what did they say about your outfit? Who commented
I don't remember
what?
actually.
Oh, come on.
No, I'm serious. I
you
don't.
have a picture of it in your window.
I think it was about this shirt, which I decided to wear again today. So this is limited
because
edition.
It's too small, right?
They said something to that effect.
I'm just kidding.
And I think it was something about wearing a shirt with your own face on it or something. Which
it is like playing a concert wearing a shirt of your band T-shirt of your own.
Remember
band.
this daily jazz advice.
Yeah, it's not true anymore, but it's not true. It's twice a week, if that.
But we're still here having fun. It's not daily, but we're talking today about something that we haven't talked about in a while. But I think that we do exemplify in our playful musical banter that we often do at the beginning of the show or at the end of the show or in between in the show. And that I have the feeling, this will be interesting to sort of see as we get into this discussion, but I have the feeling both of us may take this for granted in a little bit, in some ways, not in a bad way. Like when we talk about, taking for granted a certain part of your practice routine or a loved one or something, that's not good. But I think that there is maybe a positive way to take for granted and not focus in too much. Of course, we're talking today about playing out.
That's right.
But I do think that this is the kind of skill that is good to take for granted, to not talk about a lot, to let come out organically in your playing.
For sure.
And it's something that people notice about, both of us and how we play. So it'll be, and we never talk about it. We never talk about, how do you take this out? I think we do have some musical discussions in that while we're playing, if one of us takes it out, there is a little bit of there's a reaction, there's an invitation maybe to go somewhere, which I think is a big part of this. Because a lot of people think, playing out is such a solitary thing. You're going to take it out and everybody else stays in. And I think that that's a limiting way to look at this technique that's really closely related to a lot of other things that we're doing as well. It's not just the harmonic going in and out.
That's exactly right. I'm so glad you mentioned that because I look at taking it out, meaning playing notes or lines or phrases that are completely outside of what is in the key, right?
Yeah.
So if we're,
as Key and Peele might say, are you outside of your mind? Are you outside of the key?
Are you outside of your mind right now? Yes. Are you outside of the key right now? So if you're playing an F7 chord, typically you would use like an F dominant scale, the Mixolydian scale.
Yeah. Perhaps a Lydian.
You could use a Lydian dominant.
But there's still something established.
There's something that is
a harmonic palette.
Right. It's got an F in it. It's got some important notes for F7 in it, right? So generally taking out is choosing notes that are against that in some kind of way, that don't
in outer space.
That you're not really locked into whatever chord that you're on. I think about this, Peter, this is more in line to me with this. With playing like an altered scale. With playing something all we're doing when we're taking it out, I think, is ratcheting up tension. Mm-hmm. Like we're ratcheting up the tension so that we can release that tension. It's all about tension and release. Life is.
Yep.
Music is.
And that's the storytelling part too.
That's the storytelling part. So this is just another device. That starts with literally that, right? Mm-hmm. That's tension and release, right? And then this is tension and release. And then that's tension and release. And then this is tension and release. And then that's tension and release. Yeah. And then that's tension and release, right? It's all just tension and release. That's all we're doing here. So in general, that's the big picture. Now, there are techniques that I would love to discuss with you, which we really haven't talked a lot about.
If only we had a podcast with the title, How to Take It Out, in a venue with which to talk about it.
We could totally proceed. We could totally do it. Yeah, so we should get into it then. We should maybe get into it.
Well, I think you actually just started at a great place even to frame the discussion in that those wonderful chords you just played going back and forth from the F major is thinking about the sort of harmonic palette, the sort of harmonic, area we'll call it sometimes, the sort of the thesis for what is going to be right and wrong in terms of taking it out. When we take it out, we're playing the wrong notes. As like if it's as simple as that dominant scale is the right note, so anything else half step up is gonna include notes that are not the right ones. But to have these different areas and think about them as harmonic areas before we even start to apply improvisation to them. So like you went from, I think, the first one was maybe like a 5 with altered kind of a sound. Is that what you did?
That's right.
Yeah. So, but that's just as valid and interesting, or potentially interesting for improvisation as, like an A flat 13,
something
sharp
crunchy.
11.
Yeah.
Yeah. Should we be chording? I don't know.
Yeah, that's all true, man. Just like it's all about ratcheting up the tension and releasing it. So let's get into it, Peter. Like I mentioned, the C7 sharp 9, sharp 5, or flat 13, or however you want to talk about it, to the F is like the first way you might think about taking it out, even though it's not really taking it out, right? You would now consider this very much in, but 80 years ago, not very much in. Like it was still rather tense for a lot of people. But this is what I'm saying. It's all cultural, this stuff of like dissonance,
Maybe you're doing more of a traditional 5 to 1.
500 years ago, that was dissonant.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like
that might have put you in some a plague old prison if you're not careful.
It could have got you jailed. Yeah, certainly. And this was just out of the question.
Prison, I guess.
Yeah.
Plague old.
Nice.
Get out of plague old prison. That's gonna be our next course.
Yeah. So this kind of like using the 5 with altered extensions is a way of taking it out. You're taking it, this C7 altered scale going to F, right? If we're going to F, C, D flat, E flat, E, G flat, A flat, B flat. There's no F in this. So that's pretty far outside of the key of F.
Yeah.
Right? So it's just an interesting way to think about it. Even like something like a dominant chord can be the first step into taking it out.
Yeah, and I think that even with this one, one sort of test or opportunity to experiment and see if this works, or even if you like it, and try to find some different possible areas that you could use this in your improvisation, is just to try it, but stay over the same chord. So in this case, we've got the C altered, but just put it right on top of the F.
Yeah, totally. This is McCoy does that all the time. Where you'll put the 5 over it, so instead of, if you're just on an F, like you're really using that 5 chord as a bit of tension, even over just one chord.
Right.
It doesn't need to be in the chord changes.
Yeah, and I was even thinking, so like you demonstrated, you start on the chord, so in this case, F7, kind of sussy sound.
Yeah.
So I'm improvising over that. And then I'm going to go to the C altered, and then back to the F.
Yeah.
And if I did it with some chords, I wouldn't even have to, change up my chords. I'm still staying fourth, sort of dominant.
Yeah.
But then your option would be to like find, just slide that one half note down.
That's right.
Which actually would give it less tension in a way, because you're kind of calibrating the outness tension, right? Because if I stay F and float that on top, it's pretty much like, whoa, what's going on? Whereas if it gives it a little bit more of directionality, I think.
Before we get any deeper, Peter, into the harmony of all of this, into some ideas of ratcheting up the tension, let's talk about a really important factor in this, which is rhythm.
Yes.
Which is something that you might not think about with taking it out, but we're both kind of acquiescing to a certain rhythmic parameter, right?
Yeah.
And we're both doing things that help with the heavy lifting of taking something outside of the normal key. So just notice there, you're doing a lot of sort of these, what we might call cell patterns, right? Where you're kind of working around your thumb. I've noticed this when I've transcribed your playing. Like you will use a thumb position to really make some interesting rhythmic things happen. And when you do this sort of like back and forth, up and down thing, thinking about maybe blocking where your thumb is, you don't have to be that specific with it, but you're not just going like, right? You're not doing that. And you're not really doing that either. It's more of like creating
Yes.
These little patterns that happen. And I know patterns is a bit of a dirty word in improvisation these days, but it's, I think, a necessity when you are, especially when you're starting out with this sort of idea of ratcheting up the harmonic tension.
Yeah.
If you can create some kind of rhythmic or thematic patterns within your improvisation, some motifs, if you will, you can then take them anywhere, and your listener's ear is going to be able to hear the structure with a pattern, and it makes it a little bit more easy for them to follow when you take it outside of the key center.
Yes. Yeah. It's such an important part of this, is understanding the relationship between, we've said it many times before, melody, harmony, and rhythm.
They all come together.
But yeah, and so when we think about what patterns are we, because we're always trying to establish patterns, even when we think we're not, for the listener. I mean, like that's how we put our sentences together, our paragraphs, our musical sentences together to craft a story, and then to introduce drama. So like as we pull the rug out from under the listener with the harmonic patterns they're expecting, i.e. we're not staying in F when we're supposed to be, and maybe the bass player is, and maybe it's a known part of that, we're still on the first 4 bars of the blues and we're going somewhere else. What do we do to kind of, like, what is the glue that's going to be there? And a lot of times we think, oh, that's like you say, patterns are a dirty word because you're thinking melodically, but rhythmic patterns is such an easy way to ground things for the listeners. So it's like, as we're pulling the rug under, we're still giving them something to be able to hold on to understand as we go to different lands and different interesting places. McCoy Tyner comes to mind as being a master of this. And once you start seeing it, like how he plays off of these rhythmic patterns, it's so like, and then calibrates that to how out harmonically he's letting his actual melodies go. So if you have, what's actually holding it together? Yes, you've got the ba-da-dee-doo, which can go anywhere chromatically, but it's really the rhythm, and not just the exact rhythm, but how it sets up the phrasing, right?
That's right.
So you're going to get back, but if you keep changing up the rhythm, the rhythmic pattern and the melodic pattern, as you're also changing up the harmony, that's fine, and you can do that.
Yeah.
But you're not really giving the listener a cohesive story then. You're already pulling the harmony out, which is the transitional thing. So it's like, give something else to hold the thing together.
And,
or not, but at least be aware of it.
Something you can do to work on this is actually to just take the melody and harmony out of the equation altogether. Something I like to do sometimes is have a student just take like 4 notes, just chromatic notes, C, D, flat, D, and E flat.
Yes.
And then like, let's play a blues.
Okay.
I'm just going to play these 4 notes, right? And so I'm just going to think like a drummer, essentially, and start creating my rhythmic patterns. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and... Super fun. That was actually a super fun solo to take, right? And I started to use the top part of those 4 notes as like an accent. Yeah. But you can hear some rhythmic themes being developed. It's actually way easier to develop them. You can do this too with 2 hands and just 2 notes. You can do, Aaron Parks has this thing where he closes the piano lid. And you're just taking a drum solo basically, and then you just take that then to your hands.
Yes.
And this is, I think, a real hack to this, because if you do that, you can then practice. It doesn't matter what notes you're playing, you're going to have a good thematic thing. Let's try the Aaron Parks thing. So let's do 2 choruses. I'm going to take a solo above the keyboard, like as if I close the lid on our setup here.
Yes.
And I'm going to take a little drum solo.
Nice.
And then I'm going to take that. I'm just going to really move that to the keyboard, and I'm not really going to be thinking about the notes. It's going to be random with it. I'm not thinking about the changes at all.
Okay.
Ready? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and... That's great.
Yeah.
That's a real solo. Like that's a real, and I wasn't thinking about any kind of notes or whatever. I'm literally, I mean, I was kind of hitting some F things just because my brain would not let me.
Yeah.
My biggest fault is I can't not play. No, it would not let me kind of hit the changes, but that's really freeing. And it's a great exercise. And that has nothing to do with what we're doing harmonically, but it's super crucial to free you up so that you can confidently take things outside of a tonal center.
That's great. And, what I'm noticing too in that example is your attention to the phrasing. Yeah, the rhythm is important. And you're really focusing in on that and like the clarity of that and the patterns that come out of that stay as you're moving throughout the chorus, but also what that does to set up the phrasing. And so that's this whole thing of like, it's not just the rhythm like you would look at it on the page where you have a string of eighth notes and maybe some rest in there where, walk someone, I'll show you what I'm talking about. Same thing.
1, 2, 3.
If I just think about the rhythm, it's just. So straight eighth notes will be. But if I'm getting the phrasing to it.
So much fun too.
Yeah.
Like I could hear it in your playing. Like it opened up your playing a little bit.
Yes.
In a way that, I mean, it's something that it's, by the way, there's no finish line to this too. As we're even talking about this, I'm like, I should put this in my practice routine this week. This is really, really fun.
These kind of restrictions are great because it really pushes you, yes, to focus on the rhythm and the phrasing.
Yeah.
And when you don't have those, like you go into it thinking, oh, the interesting out places that I go harmonically is what's going to make this work. And that just becomes one element. What becomes, I think, even more interesting is what's going to hold it together.
That's right.
You've got the freedom to go wherever. Because a lot of times, we look at the entry point to playing out is taking something and then just going up half step chromatically.
That's right.
Like that's sort of the easiest way. So it's built in that you're going to use the same rhythm, that you're going to use the same phrasing most likely. You might offset it a little bit in terms of where you start the phrase. But that's really the same concept where you have it built in to have the phrasing and the rhythm as the constant, and then the harmony can go anywhere.
Yeah, this was an exercise I think that Aaron had mentioned, and I believe Fred Hirsch mentioned this too, developed by Sofia Rosso, their classical teacher, where your hands on the top of the piano is like your right hand, and your feet is like your left hand. So you can, and this is like doing a classical piece like this, where you can read the rhythm and do that. But you can also do this with your improvisation. Yeah. Okay, so that's just a little bit on phrasing and on rhythm. And I think there's a lot to be said with that. And we'll probably, Peter, it's hard because like for some of these things, it's like we almost don't know what we're doing until we're playing it a little bit more, you know, and you kind of like identify. But one thing I know we can talk about is some strategies melodically and harmonically to take it out. So we've talked about just putting the 5 over a chord and like superimposing like a dominant chord over it. Another way to do it is to, you might slip or slide chromatically up or down. So if you're on that F7 sus again, you can go up to like a G flat 7 sus. I really have in my left hand here, put the chordy back up maybe. In my left hand here, I have F, B flat, and E flat.
Yep.
Right? And this
classic fourth force.
Classic fourth. So the best way to do this, we think about, I'm playing a lot around here, this like C pentatonic, right? That C minor pentatonic.
Yep.
Not everything, right? There's definitely going to be some A's in there and stuff, but you can start with that for sure. And you just slide that up a half step. Or down a half step. That kind of thing can be really easy to do because you don't have to think very much. You just slip in and slide in either way.
Yeah, and I think that's the way to start it, where you're shifting everything. So,
yeah,
where you're actually going in and out of those areas. And even if you take, like you said, C minor pentatonic over the F, and then maybe if you're comfortable there, also kind of that F major 6 pentatonic. So you got 2 different choices, which is really just a D minor.
Yeah. Now, it's risky here, Peter, but I would like to suggest we switch the tune a little bit to maybe some Autumn Leaves, because we can demonstrate how you can do this slip slide above or below in like a changes situation.
Yes.
A 2-5-1 situation. So in Autumn Leaves, right, you have a 2-5-1 to B flat, right? So if I'm doing this, you can do things like your C minor 7, and maybe that stays the same. But for our F7 chord, instead of that, we can do what's called the tritone sub.
Yeah.
We can do a B7, but maybe we do a B7 sus.
Yeah.
And we use like an A major pentatonic or F sharp minor pentatonic, heading to our B flat 7.
Nice.
And then we do our 2-5 to G minor, right? A minor 7 flat 5, D7 to G minor. Maybe the A minor 7 flat 5, we keep that in. Maybe for the D7, though, we do a tritone sub and sus it out. A flat 7 sus.
Yeah.
To our G minor. Let's try that and see how that goes. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Yeah.
You got it, Peter. Try it. That's pretty nice.
And that's
man.
interesting,
That's
kind
pretty
of
nice.
maybe going in a little more, which is a good way to practice it, I think, a little more than you eventually would want to do most of the time, but kind of forcing you to make those adjustments. Because I could already tell, a subtle change in approach actually has a big effect on how out it feels.
Yeah.
And that is this idea of, on the 2-5-1, so if we go C minor and think about that as kind of a pentatonic,
Yeah.
any of the pentatonics, but this is like C minor pentatonic. And then the F7, you said tritone substitution.
B7 sus.
Yeah, B7 sus. But if you go pentatonic there, something like that, as opposed to like a Lydian dominant or something that's more, like that's a different sound because of where you're coming from. So you got...
Totally.
And it's not a right or wrong, but it's different.
It's different.
So that's a little bit more of that 5-1 that we started the whole thing over the F. We got C7 with the altered sound. So it's good to not only get the actual harmonies, in this case C minor, tritone substitution to give it that outness, but different ways of approaching it with pentatonics, depending on what you're coming from.
Yeah.
Right? Because if I started scale too, and went C minor Dorian, and then went up to pentatonic over the B, that's a different kind of a sound too. They're all out, but they're different kinds of out.
They're all out, but they're different kinds of out. I love it.
And then there was another one that go ahead, because I've got another one, but it'll be a little bit more advanced. So.
Well, there's another way that we can think about this 2-5-1 situation too, that I like to think about it. And it's kind of slipping from the bottom up, but it's a little bit different. So if we were to do our 2-5-1 to B flat, we keep the 2-5 intact. C minor 7 to F7. And then we're gonna land on B flat, but instead of landing on B flat, right? And by the way, the bass player doesn't have to know any of this stuff.
No.
Like when I'm walking for you, I'm not trying to do all that. I'm letting you do it. I'm hitting the changes. That's the tension that happens.
In fact, I think the bass player, an advanced way of accompanying this that I've noticed with really good bass players is they do know what's happening because they can hear it.
Of course.
But they don't shift to it right away because sometimes that takes too much of the tension away.
Yeah.
And the whole point of taking it out. In fact, that's a little bit of an annoyance sometimes. If I go C minor and then I'm doing, some kind of like B substitution if they're going right there and playing
You
it.
want that tension.
Yeah, because this sounds great, and then it resolves down to
And
there.
likewise, you don't always have to change your left hand. Your left hand can stay
Right.
on like an F7, and you can do that sort of like F sharp pentatonic.
That's sort of that calibration
And it
of
gets you that-
tension
yeah.
as well.
So the one I was talking about, if I can just go back, is C minor 7. We'll keep
Yes.
that the same. F7, we'll keep that the same. And instead of landing right on B flat major 7, you could do the slip and slide from below. So like an A major 7, which is similar to that F sharp minor 7. And then you
Backdoor.
and then you come up, right? Do the same thing on the minor 2/5. A minor 7 flat 5, D7, and then G minor, but instead of landing on G minor, land on that F sharp minor 7 first. Let me try that.
Yeah.
And then you maybe give it a go. 1,
Yep.
2, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So that's a fun one.
It's a lot of fun.
That's
and,
fun.
and I actually forgot which one you
Don't
said.
worry
I was
about
like,
it.
I'm
You
just gonna
sounded
play it
great.
out.
You sounded great.
But I was thinking about when you were playing and I was doing the bass line, one thing, I mean, for bass players, for your left hand, for you playing with bass players and kind of reacting what they're doing, is I was using a technique of using the trigger of you playing out in these different ways instead of trying to match that exactly harmonically because that might cancel it out. So avoiding that, but doing something rhythmic to play out as well. This is another thing that you can do. Like once the time is set and you feel like you're locked into the groove, into the form, what great bass players do when they start to hear us take it out, they don't necessarily try to match exactly what we're doing, but they have their own way of going out. So if we're, it might be like going to the offbeats instead of if they're playing a 2 feel, or there might be some triplet half note patterns or something.
Patterns
something
is key
to pull
too.
things.
They'll
Yeah,
usually put a pattern to it.
it's always
too.
a pattern
Yeah.
or something because but it's like a trigger to say, let's all loosen up, let's go some places, let's explore,
Yeah.
let's take it out. But it's not the literal sense of I have to match you exactly how you're taking out. No, this is just an invitation to play in a different way, and it's not like and let's all come in at the exact.
Yeah.
Come back in at the exact same time. No, let it slide in, let it resolve, let it go over the bar lines or something. But there's always those elements of taking it out. And if you work on them methodically one at a time, you'll start to hear them and understand them. The beauty of it then is putting them together in an interesting way.
Yeah.
The same way that if we play, that's great, where we shifting up together. And then we bring it back to the F. But what about if we don't do it? Or if we do it, but if we delay that with the left hand? Just that little bit of delay gives it a different kind of sound.
That's right.
Maybe we go there first with the left hand.
I like it.
That gives it that crunch and that little bit of tension. It's just another technique of doing that.
One more thing that you can do on tunes with changes, Caleb, if we get the chordy back up,
Don't go changing.
to try to please me, is we can use the root to our advantage. So you can change, this is a little bit of like an instant reharm.
This is called the advantageous root concept.
Is it? Did you just make that up?
Henceforth, yes.
Ding, ding, ding. That's a good one. Advantageous root concept. So
I'm not allowed to say or like, so I got to say something.
that's great. I love it. So our C minor 7 to our F7 to our B flat, right? So we can change the quality or even inversion of these chords, and we can really make something interesting. We'll just pick one chord. So the kind of easiest way to do this is to change the root of what you're doing into the third. So if we do our 2-5 in B flat, let's just do that much. I'm going to take if we can take the C minor 7, instead of C minor, maybe we make that A flat major over C. Or maybe we do it to the F. Maybe we make it D flat over F instead of F7. Right? This gives us something that's outside of the normal changes. Check it out, G flat over B flat, right? Sorry, let me get the B flat in. And you resolve it then to where it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
You know? But you're using that root, so the bass player is playing something that sounds, they're like, wait, what's going on here? But, it sounds really good. It's not quite in the changes. So let me try that. I'm going to do that over all of the tonics. So I'll do that over the B flats and the G minors. I'm going to turn the B flats into G flat over B flat, and I may or may not resolve that. And I'm going to turn the G minors into... You know what I'm going to do with the G minors? I'm not going to do E flat over G flat because that's a little too close to G minor.
It doesn't. You're already sensing it's not going to give you the tension.
It might not give me the tension that I want. So what I'll probably do is, the go-to here would do like a big G major 9, which can get corny if you overuse this, but it's a great way to take it out just once. So let's try that. I'm going to change. I'm gonna be strategic with changing these. I'm not gonna do every one because you'll see it gets annoying if you overdo it. But this sort of instant reharm where you're using the root that's already there, but changing the chord. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and. G major there.
Yeah.
Just changing the quality of the chord using an inversion can be a way to take it outside of your audience's expectations. And it's great because your bass player already knows the note to hit that's going to make it sound good. So you make them sound really good. Bass players love this, by the way, usually.
Right.
Because it gives them a
That's why I
little
kind of went and
something
just sat on those whole notes
Yeah,
too.
totally.
Because we did.
Yeah.
Wait, let me try this. I've never really thought. I think I played it, but
you do it all the time.
Okay,
This is another example of things Peter Martin does every solo. It doesn't know what he's doing. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and.
That's the kind of obvious one. I kind of struggled to come up with good ones on that, I felt like.
Well, this is a go-to for me, so it might be just some experience.
Well, you were doing some more too. I kept looking for them on the 2s and the 5s, and I think the magic maybe for this one can be on the tonics.
The tonics is where
I remembered
really,
at the end.
Because if you think about it, the cadence, right, the 2 and the 5 that gets you there, it's naturally setting up your audience's expectations. They hear this, they want to hear that, right? So if you do this, it automatically is like, woo. That kind of thing.
Nice.
It's gold. It's gold.
Yeah.
So that is maybe some things that we can do on the tunes that have changes. Let's get back maybe, Peter, to one chord. Right?
Okay.
There's one chord situations, modal situations where you're kind of like burning out, right? We love a
Okay.
C minor burnout.
Right.
We love a C minor burnout.
Well, one thing I was thinking about on that is we talked about going up chromatically. So if we're on that F or the C minor, right? And then we can think about certainly going down, but it's still chromatic movement. You know, moving up and down or whatever.
Yeah.
But whole step movement, I think would be the next.
So you're just taking a motif here
Yep.
and you're moving it up in whole steps as a
Exactly.
way.
And what this does is this takes you to an interesting place in a different way than going chromatically. So chromatically, you're going to instantly go to something that sounds very out, right? Because everything's going to be different. So if I'm going C minor, I mean, not everything, there's some common notes, but the placement of them, especially if you're doing the same melodic pattern and rhythmic pattern, it's going to be very obvious. But whole step movement is, if you just go up one, that's not that out, right?
Yeah.
That might not even be considered out, but that second one.
Yeah,
know,
now we're someplace wild. Yeah.
And then, of course, you can get back, like these, you can potentially get back to where you started.
That's right.
Quick enough that you could run through all of them. Whereas chromatically,
It's a little much.
that's going to sound insanity, but
I mean, this is really hard to do on command. Like for me to be like, all right, give us an example. But
yeah.
give us an example.
Okay.
Here we go. I'm gonna try. Let's do a C minor. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and.
So the first one was like straight whole tones, and then I mixed it up, which was the next thing I was going to say, with some half steps and some whole steps. It doesn't have to be one or the other. So like if I'm something like that, which is of course the, you know, what is it?
Yeah. What is that?
The McCoy Tyner, fourth, fifth, something.
Yeah.
Off of Real McCoy.
Off of Real McCoy. Yeah. It's so good.
That's kind of what this is from. Going up in whole step. But when you're actually throwing it together as going out, you can go half steps and whole steps.
Hey.
And then you can skip or do whatever, but it sort of starts first understanding what those patterns are.
Man, that's great. So piggybacking on this, Jeffrey Keyser talks about medians. What do you know about medians?
I know nothing.
So it's a similar concept of what you're doing here.
That's kind of a mid concept, isn't it?
It is exactly what it is. It's a mid. The concept of medians is you use diatonic medians to, not diatonic medians, but chromatic medians to take it out. So if we're on our C minor here, right, you can take it up or down in, say, minor thirds. So
that was the next one I was going to talk about. So I know exactly what this is.
So you go from C minor to E flat minor to G flat minor.
Yes.
A minor.
And
then you're back to C minor.
Yeah.
And that one works really well. So again, it's even less than the whole tone scale because there's less options. Let me give that a shot. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to go the opposite way. I'm going to go down. So C, A minor, G flat minor, E flat. Give me one more time. One.
I kind of messed you up there because that's what we were talking about. I did.
You went with me. It's not great. Yeah.
You were like, gotta say that.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3. That one is so much fun. So just taking that pattern of like, and it's a rhythmic pattern. I'm not really thinking about.
You're using the same harmony on each of them.
What do you mean?
Like
they're all minor sevens.
Yeah,
they're all minor sevens. Yeah. So like taking this down, C minor, A minor,
F sharp
G,
minor.
F sharp minor,
Yeah.
E flat.
Yep.
I can use the same one for that, you know?
So what is that called?
Medians, chromatic medians. Now, there's two kinds of chromatic medians.
Is that median because it's moving through the diminished cycle?
So chromatic medians share one note in common. So
right.
C minor shares one note, E flat with E flat minor, which shares one note, F sharp with F sharp minor, which shares one note, A minor, which shares
That's the
one
connector.
note. Right. Now, there's also another kind of chromatic medium, C minor, which shares one note with A flat minor, which shares one note with E minor, which shares one note, G with C minor.
Yeah.
Major thirds. This is another Keyserism. So you can do the same thing. Instead of moving the chords in minor thirds, you go like C minor, E flat minor, F sharp minor, A minor. You can move them up in major thirds, C minor, E minor, A flat minor. Right. And this is even less. There's only 3 options. Let's try that. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. Give it a go, Peter. Hey. Newsflash, Jeffrey Keyser knows what he's talking about.
I know.
Yeah.
And there, what I did was I went up the first time.
Yeah.
C, E minor, A flat minor, C minor, and then I came down the second time.
I mean, the best way to practice any of this stuff is really to splash around in it. Like, experiment with it. If you're going for playing out, chances are you're probably on the more advanced end of things anyway, because you actually have to you actually have to be able to make things sound good inside the changes before you can really take it out. Like, you have to understand the general intuitive principles of tension and release before you can really make this work. You have to be confident in your touch, in your sound production, in your rhythm to make this work, as we've already discussed. So if you're at this stage, you're at the stage where you should probably just be splashing around, trying a bunch of stuff with these concepts. Try the chromatic, moving it around chromatically. Try the whole steps. Try the minor thirds. Try the major thirds. Remember, keeping all the qualities the same.
Yep.
And I think you're going to find that you're going to get a lot of good traction out of all that.
It's great. So, I was just thinking with going through the minor thirds, the diminished cycle, one that I use a lot is really based upon that movement, but coming from just a slightly different angle. So if we look at the F7, that's that fourth sound. And we talk about chromatic, we talk about whole tone, but going up in minor thirds like this. So F7, like these work really well to sit on top of staying the same in the left hand.
Absolutely.
Be it the bass or not. So if I'm going F7, which gives it that, is that Phrygian? Kind of a Phrygian sound.
Yeah, keep D flat,
Yeah, but that's actually A flat 13, right? And then the B becomes, moving up in minor thirds, same chord, but it sounds like the altered. The 1 becomes the altered, right? Yeah. And then this one, D. That's the really crunchy one, right?
It's like crunchy country.
Yeah. Because it gives you that major 7, of the tonic of where we're at. So what it sounds like. So that last one. But because you're moving up and like the pattern of moving like that, it still sounds crunchy, but it makes sense. You know? And that sounds...
Woo birds are coming out.
Yeah, that sounds more... I mean, if I play it like, like straight like that, then you hear the pattern. But the way I improvise over, and this is also from McCoy Tyner, obviously. It sounds almost like random, but it makes sense. You know what I mean? So it's like, how do we how do we find some inner logic there, even if it isn't obvious to the listener, to kind of bind together this melodic movement so that we can just sit on one chord, or maybe we and then come back to it. That's another way to do it. It doesn't have to, like, it can sort of stay in the listener's consciousness. But that's one of the ones, and then you can combine those. That's fun too. Where you're just shifting up a half step from, so it's like F, A flat, A flat, B, C, B, D, E. It's very important to move up on your chair too while you do this. Yeah. So.
Stank faces. Hey.
And one more. Can we go one more level?
Please.
So same thing, but sometimes, and I'll just do it the whole time now, stay on that F7 sus, but just do this in the left hand. So go out with your left hand, but not with the right hand. That still is out, right? But all I did
so
was
good. Yeah.
I was staying right there in F7.
Hot.
Coming in hot.
All right, I got one more for you, Peter. One more technique here.
Let me lift up my chair even higher then.
What if I told you the notes don't matter? Oh. What if I told you the changes
Isn't
don't
that what
matter?
this whole episode's been about?
What if I told you the chord changes don't matter?
Okay.
Doesn't matter what it's in relation to. Doesn't matter where it is or where it's going.
I'm with you.
What if I told you you can build all of this with triads? What if there's some rules that you can work on, a little bit of a game?
A little bit of a restricted
Have you ever heard the name Garzone?
Oh, I've heard that.
Welcome to the Garzone zone. George Garzone's
Or as they say in
zone.
Spain, Zona di Garzone.
George Garzone, mountain of a tenor saxophone player, and I was lucky enough to get to study with him when I was up in New York.
Vocally, he's a baritone, I believe, though.
He's got a rich voice. He's an incredible musician. He's a great guy, and he came up with this concept back in the day called the Triadic chromatic approach. You can find it online still. You can go buy some DVDs, and I encourage you to go to the source.
What would one do with those DVDs?
You can play those DVDs, but man, go. I'm sure there's some books that George has got. Maybe Caleb, if we can link to the books. If there's no books, please cut this out of the episode.
If there's a dusty little bag, maybe Strand Books down in New York City and down in the basement, a dusty little music
I just want to make sure
corner.
he gets the credit because we're about to spill the tea a little bit on his concept because it's been. I mean, it's not. It's out there already. It's been out there for a long time. Everybody knows about it, and it's a really cool little concept. It's just a little game you can play to help free your mind from some of this stuff, and it's so clever. He was so smart to come up with this. It's called the triadic chromatic concept. Peter, there's four main triads that we can. The four sort of first triads you might think about: the major triad, the minor triad, the augmented triad, and the diminished triad. Right? So what the triadic chromatic concept starts with is connecting these, and there's two rules. You can use any of these triads. You have to connect them via a half step, and you can't do the same inversion twice. So for instance, if we were to go, let's say we start at an E flat triad, right? We're going to connect this by a half step up or down. Let's go up, E, and we want to do maybe another major triad. You couldn't do B. That's against the rules because you can't do two of the same inversions quality in a row.
Oh,
so you could, so not the same inversion. You can do E and you could do G for a major triad.
Yeah.
Because those are different inversions. It has to be major,
the next one.
No, it can be anything.
Okay.
But it can't be first inversion. It can't be root inversion.
Yeah.
Sorry, the root position, not first inversion. But you can start connecting major, minor, diminished, and augmented by these half steps, down and up, and it gets you this really cool, really interesting way. And again, you can phrase it. Rhythm is going to matter here a bunch. And this is just the bare bones basics of this. And so it takes a bit of work at first. You start for me, I love combining major, diminished, augmented, And you can start doing some rhythmic patterns. And it gets you, now you're not thinking about any changes. You're not thinking about this chord goes with whatever. It simply becomes this rhythmic thing.
Yes.
Can we try a little bit?
Yeah.
I'm going to go a little bit medium. It's been a while since I've actually worked on this. I use this all the
placing this
time.
over?
What's that?
What are we placing this over?
Let's just do a C minor, right?
Okay.
Or an F7, whatever you want. And we could also do it over Autumn Leaves. Like it works great because it doesn't matter. The notes don't matter. The changes
Right.
don't matter. But as an exercise, I haven't been strict with this as like trying to do this in a minute. But I do use this all the time if I want to play out, like especially, I have my go-to shapes with this now at this
Right.
point, you know what I mean? And then you can take this, especially like I would combine this with like, you know, playing inside. So if we do an F7, I'll try to play inside. I'll try to do this triadic chromatic hookup.
Yeah.
Hooking up major, minor, augmented, and diminished triads via a half step, and then go back to something inside. That's how I like to do it. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and. As you can see, nothing is being played like within the changes themselves.
Yeah.
There's these beautiful, shapely lines.
Yeah.
Shapely
Shapely.
lines that are happening.
Shaped.
And it's really, you got to check out George Garzone's music, listen to his playing to really get the full effect of this technique. But it's super fun. And then, like I said, if there is a book, hopefully check it out and buy it. It's great.
That's so good. I mean, whenever we're using a triad as a foundation, as a connection, as a destination within our melodies, you know, within our improvisation, we're setting ourselves up for success, I feel.
100%.
And these kinds of exercises that really are about forcing you into playing something that then you have to hear. I mean, how many times do we get used to something that's comfortable with the same concept of like moving triads around with different inversions, but they link up somehow? So for a saxophone player, they have to do this. If they want to do stuff like this,
Yeah, they got
like
it.
we can just play the chord, or
Yeah.
even, you know, if we got two different triads that we want to play around with, you know, Stravinsky, whatever, we can just play it. But if you're a saxophone player or a horn player or a vocalist or whatever, you have to start to conceptualize
That's
it this way. But this kind of reminds me of that thing that I've messed around with over, like, say, the F7, E flat triad, F triad,
Yeah,
E flat F.
it's similar.
with the different versions. But this is kind of expanding it out in a way that a sax player would want to do it, which makes sense.
All
you know?
these, yeah, it's very horn playery because they're connecting these, really thinking intervallically more than like
Yeah.
like linearly. Like it's definitely like a is it horizontal or is it vertical?
It's horizontal.
It's horizontal. It's a
Like,
horizontal
we're
way to
always
think about it.
Yeah.
I love this, man. I'm gonna include this in my practice this week too. 'Cause
So good.
The
So
rhythm
good.
stuff. If you add that rhythm stuff and this
Oh, yeah.
chromatic triadic concept,
Yep. And this stuff can be used with like moving in the minor thirds, the diminished,
Yeah.
or like you could actually take this and move it around up and down in minor thirds. Like this stuff can stack, these concepts can stack on top of each other.
man, let's go out with a little playing, shall we?
Sure. Almost went there.
Hey. Hey.